Good evening. Before we begin, I'm proud to report that our country is safer, stronger, and far wealthier than it has ever been before. We are doing great. Less than 2 years ago, we inherited an economic and social disaster. After the worst inflation in 48 years, the wide open borders with millions and millions of people pouring in from all over the world, including criminals of all types, and 11,888 murders, many of whom killed more than one person. We had transgender for everybody, men and women's sports, crime ravaging our cities, and the whole world was laughing at us as a nation, but not anymore. 2 years ago, our country was dead. Now we are the hottest country anywhere in the world. America is respected like we have never been respected before. We have more money being invested in the United States than at any time in the history of our country. More Americans are working today than ever before. This week it was announced that inflation saw the largest monthly decline in more than 6 years. Just happened. It was just given out. The media reported it, and we accept it. The best in 6 years. The tax cuts in our great, big, beautiful bill are saving hardworking families thousands and thousands of dollars, like with the provisions, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security for our great seniors, along with the interest deduction on a loan used to purchase a car, but only if that car is made in America, and a 100% expensing for our job-creating businesses. Our stock markets are at their highest point in many years, but we can actually say of all time. And your 401ks, pensions, and retirement accounts are setting records every single day, the highest in history. For years, we paid the highest price for prescription drugs anywhere in the world. Now we pay the lowest price under my most favored nation's policy because I was able to get the rest of the world and the pharmaceutical companies to act responsibly. Drug prices are coming down by 70, 80, and 90%. TrumpRx.gov, this will ultimately reduce the cost of health care. You have to go to TrumpRx.gov and take advantage of it. But the cost of health care is coming way down because of what we've done with prescription drugs. And with Trump accounts, every child in America now has access to a tax-free investment account to save for their future. Billions and billions of dollars are being invested, put in by companies and individuals to take care of our children so that at age 18, they will have potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in their account, and they'll get off to a great start in life. So for that, go to TrumpAccounts.gov and sign up your child or any child who'd like to sign up. Our previously wide open borders have been transformed into the most secure borders in the history of our country, with 0 illegal aliens being admitted to the United States in the past 14 months. That is 0. Nobody thought it was possible. We had the worst border in the history of our country, and now we have the best. Crime is plummeting nationwide, with the murder rate at its lowest level since 1900, or more than 125 years ago. We're making a record investment in our armed forces, and we have the strongest and most powerful military by far anywhere in the world. I built it during my first term, and unfortunately, we're forced to use it now. We won in Venezuela, which is now working with us to produce millions and millions of barrels of oil. We are likewise winning big in Iran, and you will see the fruits of that labor very, very shortly. America is back and doing really well, but we still have a major challenge that must be urgently addressed because no country can be great without fair and honest elections. You have to trust your country, because if there can be no trust, there can be no greatness. And that's very simple. No trust, no greatness. For many years, I've called for bold, swift, and decisive action to protect the integrity of America's elections. Every American deserves to know that when they cast their vote, that vote will be counted accurately in a system, and that is to make that system secure, one where cheating and interference are not just difficult, but virtually impossible. Unfortunately, the system we have today falls catastrophically short of that standard. Tonight, I'm announcing the immediate declassification and release of critical intelligence revealing shocking vulnerabilities in our election infrastructure. This evidence shows that the election system we have dangerously exposes and really exposes like levels never thought possible to hacking, exploitation, and foreign interference. Just as disturbingly, this vital information has for many years been covered up and hidden from you, the American people, our beautiful, our great American people. But that all changes right now. The documents we will release starting tonight have been gathered by the White House Government Transparency Task Force, a great group of people, along with the staff of the President's Intelligence Advisory Board, supported by our top intelligence agency chiefs, who have all personally reviewed the findings. We are presenting this evening and fully confirmed their authenticity. You can see these documents for yourself at whitehouse.gov. That's whitehouse.gov. Go check it out. Our purpose in disclosing this information is not to weaken confidence in election, but to earn that confidence by confronting vulnerabilities and correcting them very, very quickly. And that's what we're doing. The documents cover 5 major areas of concern. First, they show that over a period of years, starting during the 2020 election cycle, the People's Republic of China carried out what is believed to be the largest compromise of election data in history, resulting in China's illicit acquisition of 220 million U.S. voter files. That information includes names, addresses, phone numbers, political party preferences, and other sensitive data that would be needed to register to vote and engage in other nefarious activities, which is exactly what was happening. This data loss presents an unprecedented election security nightmare. The intelligence even shows that China assigned a data exploitation unit specifically to this new project. Compounding the travesty, the second set of documents we are releasing reveals that members of the deep state, very, very famous group of people, in many cases, in our intelligence agency work to actively suppress and downplay information about the extent of China's sinister election meddling, covering it up from both the president and the American people like nobody thought was possible. U.S. spy agencies began learning about the compromise of voter registration files in 2020 when they discovered that tens of millions of voter data, think of that, tens of millions of voters' data in 18 states have been bought, stolen, or hacked by China. Yet those responsible for sounding the alarm instead kept the information secret and hidden. They did not disclose to me as president or to anyone else, and to the best of our knowledge, they did not inform Congress. In fact, all they kept saying is, this is the most secure election in the history of our country, a standard, very pat line that was divvied out to say. The cover-up of this colossal security breach is even more disturbing in light of the additional information showing that China engaged in other election-related activities to undermine my first administration and our 2020 campaign. They did not want, and they just didn't want it. They fought like hell not to have it, Donald Trump, to win, and for good reason. As the documents we are releasing show, CIA reporting explicitly stated, and I quote, In mid-2018, the Chinese Communist Party's policy was to leverage all domestic and foreign elements that were opposed to the U.S. president in an effort to reduce the U.S. president's votes and make him resign or prevent his re-election. Isn't that nice? Also, in mid-2018, China was working to influence the results of the U.S. midterm elections and later the results of the 2020 presidential election itself. Separately, in mid-2019, the Chinese government's strategy against the United States was focused on undermining domestic confidence in the U.S. president. They wanted to just make you sound like your president wasn't so hot, when actually your president has done a great job, and they did everything possible to do exactly that. Going on, this document says, and this is by the CIA, the strategy included efforts to use Chinese contacts with big U.S. companies to influence U.S. business leaders to turn against the President of the United States of America. The Chinese government sought to identify U.S. journalists who had reported negatively on the U.S. president and pay them large sums of money to write more negative articles about him, as many as they could, and they didn't care what they said. The Chinese government wanted U.S. president to lose the next election, and the reason they wanted me to lose is because they knew I was wise to them, charged them billions and billions of dollars worth of tariffs, and built the strongest military anywhere in the world. We have the strongest military anywhere in the world. These are exact quotes from the CIA reporting. The name of the person doing the quote is now under review, but it gets even worse. Raw intelligence obtained by the FBI in 2020, yet buried by rogue bureaucrats, stated that China's activities even included an attempt to manufacture illegal ballots for Joe Biden. Documents show that during this period, dozens of significant CIA and NSA reports about China's election targeting were kept out of the presidential briefing. These were briefings I would get almost every day. Everything was kept out that was of importance. One email among intelligence analysts admitted that they had, quote, deliberately massaged the presidential daily briefing to withhold information regarding Chinese activities related to the election. Another official inside the FBI wrote that she was running, quote, a shadow government, unquote, to keep intelligence about China's election meddling from becoming known and to keep it away from the honorable press. Other officials who witnessed such efforts perceived the motivations to be blatantly political. Recently, we found significant numbers of burn bags in formation, and this is a group of bags that were used to destroy information given by President Barack Hussein Obama to be burned. It was supposed to be burned. These bags were supposed to be at a different level by different people, incinerated and checked, but it never happened. Maybe we got lucky. We believe this was not done on purpose, but rather through gross incompetence of the people that were supposed to burn the bags. But the findings are stunning. Today, I'm asking the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the CIA to investigate how and why such crucial information was hidden, to fire those involved in the cover-up, and to file criminal charges, if appropriate, against these people. Yet concealing China's meddling was only the beginning. The third set of documents we are releasing proves that for many years, Americans were blatantly lied to about the security of our election infrastructure, including electronic voting machines and ballot counting systems. Dishonest, almost all. They're vulnerable and they're easily compromised, and people within our government knew that. Tonight, we're publishing a series of previously classified U.S. intelligence community assessments and other reports proving that our government has long known these machines are extremely exposed to attack. As one assessment states, we judge that The United States adversaries, including at a minimum Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, as well as non-state groups, have the capability to compromise U.S. election infrastructure. That's unquote, but that's some statement, isn't it, made by supposedly great patriots of our country. The document goes on to further state that, quote, we assess that centralized election-related data repositories, such as voter registration databases, poll books, and other official election websites, are most vulnerable to exploitation, and adversaries could use this access to these systems to disrupt election processes within the United States of America. Tonight, we're releasing all of those findings, and spanning from January 2020 to June 2026. This is a cyber threat aimed at the very heart of our democracy. Many people have questioned whether it could actually be possible to electronically manipulate vote totals or change election results on these terrible machines. Today, we are releasing documents that show the CIA obtained reporting of a specific plot to do a big number in favor of the corrupt Maduro regime in Venezuela. And that's exactly what happened, conspiring to digitally rig their own country's elections in 2020, and that's what they did. This reporting included precise details about methods to regime develop to digitally alter vote totals in ways that could not be detected even with an audit, no matter how deep they went. This intelligence underscores why we must take urgent action to ensure that our own system can never, ever be hacked or compromised like it was in the past. The fourth set of documents reveals that even when significant evidence of fraud has been detected, it has been buried and covered up. Among the disclosures tonight are FBI files detailing evidence of alleged fraud by a large-scale voter registration operation in Michigan. In 2020, Michigan State Police raided a Democrat Get Out the Vote organization, corrupt group in Muskegon. And we're so concerned by what they found. They were just so concerned, they couldn't believe it, actually, that they contacted the FBI in Detroit. The documents state that some canvassers admitted to FBI agents that they signed voter registration forms in other people's names, submitted fraudulent registration for people who did not exist, and received gift cards tied to their number of applications that they produced. In other words, it was pay, play, and cheat. The FBI agents working on the case believe that crimes were committed, yet the Biden Department of Justice slow-walked the investigation and killed it. Tonight, I'm asking the FBI director to ensure that the matter is fully investigated and to work with the Department of Justice to prosecute those responsible for any crimes. Finally, to reveal just how vulnerable our elections continue to be, we are releasing the results of a stunning investigation by the Department of Homeland Security. According to the DHS review, state voter rolls and public records, they identified approximately 278,000 non-citizens who are registered to vote in federal elections. Since Democrat states refuse to share their voter files, the real number is actually much higher than that. Yet, even this limited analysis found more than 250,000 foreigners illegally registered to vote. Put together, these disclosures reveal an election system so broken and so vulnerable that no one can possibly defend it. It is not defensible. Hundreds of millions of U.S. voter files are in the hands of foreign governments. Our machines and ballot counting systems are exposed to hacking and manipulation and corruption. China and other countries have been trying to meddle in our elections. Evidence of fraud has been buried. Hundreds of thousands of non-citizens and dead people are listed and active on the voter rolls, and yet we still have elections with no voter ID, no proof of citizenship, and tens of millions of ballots floating aimlessly through the mail. As one example of the insanity, California's recent election for mayor of LA and governor was held on June 2nd, a long time ago, but it was just completed a few days ago on July 10th. Think of that, much more than 1 month. Took a month to count the votes. I wonder what they were doing. This is worse than any third world country. There's no third world country that has elections like we have. In a rare move, NBC and ABC Fake News have both said that they would not cover this speech. They knew what it was about because of the fact that they don't like the topic, because they know how corrupt our system is and they don't want to reveal it. They and others in the media are part of a plot. They want to continue this fraud for whatever reason. They want to keep it going. They want to protect the radical left. They can't have a great country, and that's true. You can't have a great country without free and fair elections. Fraud like this should mean a revocation of their licenses. They use our public multi-billion-dollar in value airways for absolutely no money. They pay nothing. All we want is honesty in our elections and honesty in reporting. They pay nothing for multi-billion-dollar assets. Great damage has been done to our country. Our elections were left vulnerable to being rigged and stolen, and the trust of the American people was lost. This cannot be allowed to continue. Every American, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent, or otherwise, should be able to agree that we deserve the most secure, honest, and fair election system anywhere in the world. Secure elections should be a partisan, we should be together, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, everybody, and it should not be a partisan issue. It should cause to unite us, not to divide us. This should be a cause. We should be united, not divided. In light of the brand new and irrefutable information I have revealed tonight, my
Good. There we are. Hey everyone, I think you were just watching uh, the president's speech. I believe we had a little bit of a cutoff there. We apologize for that. Sourcing got messed up a little bit. In just a matter of moments, I'm expected to have Secretary of State, Oregon Secretary of State Tobias Reed joining me right here on this live stream. So just stay with us right now as we recap what we heard from the president tonight and look ahead to the 2024 midterm elections. We are still kind of recapping what we heard from the president tonight. He discussed what he referred to as vulnerabilities in our election system, hacking, exploitation, and foreign interference, China's acquisition of 220,000 voter files. A lot of it was paying attention to vulnerabilities in the election system and some details he laid out regarding what he says was foreign interference in previous elections and concerns about the upcoming election. He also pointed to a number of files that he says he was declassifying and going to be making public in regarding previous elections and some of the work his administration has done in investigating this. I'm actually going through this, posted on whitehouse.gov, and that's what he referenced. And I'm going through right now, and he kind of pointed to I think 4 different pillars is what he's calling them: vulnerabilities in electronic voting and ballot counting systems, China's acquisition and exploitation of American voter data, Michigan voter registration investigation, and non-citizens on state voter rolls. So what does this mean for Oregon? Well, certainly, obviously, China acquiring voter data that could be implying something in Oregon, vulnerabilities in electronic voting and ballot counting systems. Okay, that could be impacting us. Maybe not so much the Michigan voter registration, although he might argue that there are groups in Oregon that are also behaving similarly to the group that's under investigation there. But he's paid a lot of attention to non-citizens on state voter rolls. The president has paid a lot of attention to state voter rolls and demanded state voter rolls from our state election officials who have declined and rejected his request to provide those state voter rolls. That's Tobias Reed, who I'm expecting to speak with momentarily, who has not offered up the state voter rolls in Oregon, and federal courts have defended Oregon's right to not give the federal government state voter rolls. Remember that elections are run by states. That's in the U.S. Constitution. And so courts have been hesitant to give the federal government access to state data when it comes to elections, of course, because of that in the U.S. Constitution. I'd love to hear from you too about what you would like me to ask Secretary of State Reed, who's somewhat been at odds with the president, specifically over elections. Of course, Tobias Reed, a Democrat elected to the state office in Oregon, and at times President Trump has targeted this state, but certainly targeted mail-in voting, which of course Oregon prides itself on, and Tobias Reed also prides the state on as well. In fact, last week, the Trump administration sent letters threatening to prosecute election officials who did not provide voter rolls. So that would include officials even as high up as Tobias Reed. And as we've seen from the Trump administration, it has not been shy about going after and investigating elected officials who it's at odds with. And so, certainly a valid threat right there. And I see, kind of some comments. If you want to list some comments that you'd like me to ask Tobias Reed, I'm not going to have long with him. So, we'll see how much we can get. But I'm expected him to join this feed at any moment right now. So as soon as he does join this Zoom call, I'm going to start asking him some questions about the president's speech and the status of U.S. elections and elections in Oregon. But I hope you stay right here with me as we await that to be coming in again any moment now. But again, kind of going back to what we just heard from President Trump, a lot about what he says was China's interference in previous elections, going back to 2018 and in 2020. He claims, the president, in his speech tonight, that China paid journalists to write negatively about him. He says in multiple instances there's evidence that China wanted him to lose the 2020 election and sort of bolstered President Biden's campaign. I mentioned that Um, that Michigan investigation that the Department of Justice is handling. He references cover-ups and alleged voter fraud there that they're looking into. So that's something that is something we'll want to definitely hear more about as well. And again, on some of this is posted on the whitehouse.gov. So it's there for me, you, and everybody to look at. I'm just looking at Zoom, and they said we have 10 minutes left. So something that I'll have to keep an eye on. I may, yeah, I'll keep an eye on that as well as we wait for Secretary of State Reid. He also discussed the recent California primary, which took place June 2nd. And he's referenced this before, the length of time it took to certify the election. And what we saw in California, we see this often, is somebody might be in the lead or be, qualifying for a runoff. That was the case with the mayoral election, and took time to then certify the elections. And as more ballots were being counted, those rankings changed, and it obviously impacted the ending result of the election. So President Trump taking note of that. It impacted a Republican in the LA mayoral election, also impacted the gubernatorial race as well, where the top two are going to a runoff, and that includes one Republican and one Democrat. But initially there was the initial vote count had potential for two Republicans to be involved in that as well. So all to say that President Trump is certainly targeting certain states, and certainly questioning the integrity of U.S. elections. That was sort of the crux of his. That was sort of the crux of his speech tonight, a primetime speech. He noted how NBC and ABC chose not to carry the speech in full, instead pulling out segments of it. That was something that he brought up, and the networks had announced earlier that they were going to, in fact, I'm sorry, I'm looking at some of the questions right now. Some of the that's something that they would look into as well. So ABC and NBC, sorry, going back to that, the networks had announced earlier today that they weren't going to carry the speech in full. But again, that's at the network level. Working in local news, it doesn't always work like that on the local level. For instance, here KMTR did carry the president's speech in full, and other local network affiliates would be doing that as well. I'm only hesitating here because I'm worried about the remaining meeting running out of time. So wanting to make sure that we can get the entirety of Secretary Reid's interview. So I'm just going to do a quick text to my team. Make sure that we have this available to you, and that we don't lose it on our here, let me do this. I'm going to jump out, and I'll be right back in, okay?
The recording has stopped. This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, I think we are back. Apologize for those technical glitches. You know, we're dealing with Zoom and it gives us 40 minutes, and that 40 minutes expired, but we got another link up right now. Still just waiting on Secretary Tobias Reed, Oregon Secretary Tobias Reed, who is expected to join me any minute now on this feed. We'll be right here on this YouTube live stream, so stay with us. And he's actually coming in right now. So let me start this, and then you can watch live as we speak with Secretary Reed.
Hi, Brandon. The secretary will be here in a moment.
Okay, thank you very much, Tess. All right, there we go. All right, there's Secretary Reed. How are you?
I'm okay, thanks. And you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it's pretty late, but you know we're
Okay.
we're still here on the
It's
West
never
Coast.
too late for democracy.
That's true. I appreciate that. Well, Secretary Reed, I'm assuming you did just watch President Trump's speech in
did.
prime time. What's your initial reaction to what he had to say?
I think this is another example of the president spreading incoherent, provably false accusations without any evidence. And frankly, it's just another example of the consistent effort he is making to undercut confidence in elections. I think that is true because he fears what's going to happen in the upcoming election. He is worried. He knows that Americans are not happy with the results of an unnecessary war that's causing Americans to lose their lives and causing gas and everything else to be more expensive in our lives. So instead, he's casting doubt with any evidence on a system that we know in Oregon works. We run safe, accurate, and fair elections here with paper ballots that are verifiable, that are retained and audited, that are signature verified. So the president can say what he wants, but Oregonians know that this is how we hold politicians accountable, and they know that we are not going to give that up.
The president referenced a number of documents he was releasing on whitehouse.gov, and you know, it just happened. So I'm trying to go through it a little bit, but he also talked about some foreign interference in elections and investigation in Michigan and non-citizens voting. He referenced over 250,000 that they know of. Has any of these documents, has any of this data been shared with you from the federal administration?
I have not seen them yet, and I think it is fairly rich for a president to be making these claims when it is his very administration that has been consistently cutting funding for the agency that was specifically aimed at protecting our elections from that kind of foreign interference and cyber vulnerability. You know, when I was elected Secretary of State, one of the first conversations I had was with the regionally assigned folks from that agency, and then a week later, they were gone. This federal administration has stepped back from that responsibility. And so the president to now talk about that and to talk about the Department of Homeland Security Secretary talking about these things, it is maddening because we have been saying this, as have county elections officials across the state from the beginning. The president has turned a blind eye to this until it serves his own interests, which are, you know, suddenly top of mind. I don't take it as a serious effort because he could have been doing this all along. I also noticed he didn't talk at all about the 2024 election, the one he won. The president seems to be concerned about this only when his preferred candidates and he lose. Our system works because people prove their citizenship and their identity when they register. They verify their identity with their signatures when they vote. We have those paper ballots that are retained, that are recounted when necessary, that are audited. Our system works, and Oregonians know it, and they should have confidence in it.
He also asked the Department of Justice and the FBI to look into, you know, further issues related to what he claims is election interference and election fraud. And we know that last week he reached out to, that's okay, he reached out to states, including you, and threatened to perhaps pursue criminal charges against someone even as high as, you know, you, elected official. Those threats, you know, do you take them seriously, especially considering the president's Department of Justice has not been shy to actually seek investigations and prosecution against elected officials?
We take everything seriously because we know that democracy matters, but we also know that they don't have evidence. Remember what this president has done from the beginning. He cut that agency funding that I talked about already. He tried an executive order early on in his administration, which we stopped in court. He tried another executive order that we have also stopped in court. He demanded the private information of Oregon voters. We said no, that was stopped in court. He's continuing desperately to try to pass the Save America Act, which would have the effect of making it harder for eligible American and Oregon citizens to vote and hold him accountable. This is all of a piece. This is all an effort to lay the groundwork to deny results of elections in 2026. So I take everything seriously when it comes to democracy because I have a serious job, which is to defend the right of Oregonians to vote, a right which is enshrined in the Constitution, not an authority that the president can have. Article 1, Section 4 makes it very clear presidents do not run elections, states do. And that's an authority that we will defend in Oregon every single time.
What's your reaction to his claim that non-citizens are voting? He mentioned over 250,000, but mentioned that he hasn't received voter rolls from a lot of Democratic states, including Oregon.
Yeah, because he's not entitled to that. And federal courts have said that. That is very clear. We did a study in Oregon. I'm sure you've looked at it. The Legislative Fiscal Office looked at 60.9 million ballots cast in Oregon over about 20 years, and they found 38 cases of improper voting. Of course, I wish that number were zero, and we are constantly working to get to that number. But that is not a number that affects the outcome of any elections. It is vanishingly rare, and it is certainly not something that justifies, let alone makes legal, the extraordinary lengths to which this president is going to try to avoid accountability that voters are going to deliver in free and fair elections that we will have in Oregon and across this country.
I know it's late. I just have one more question for you.
Fine.
He mentioned a lot about foreign governments and their attempts to affect our elections. Do you, from your experience, believe foreign governments have the ability to infiltrate U.S. elections?
Well, it's an interesting way of putting it. I think there is clear evidence that countries are frequently trying to influence elections, but they do that by trying to get us as Americans to turn against each other and to doubt the solidity and the strength and resilience of our systems. That does not mean that votes are changing. So each of us as Oregonians and Americans should take our own responsibility as voters seriously. In Oregon, we make it convenient. So when you get your voter's pamphlet, when you get your ballot, take your time and make informed choices. Consult reliable sources. Question things that you don't think are true, and then make your choices and vote with the confidence that your paper ballot, which can't be hacked, is going to be recorded accurately. And elections will provide the kinds of accountability that our system depends on.
Secretary of State Tobias Reed, I really appreciate you staying up late and taking some time with me.
My pleasure. Thanks for your interest.
All right. Take care. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
All right, so that was Secretary of State Tobias Reed, who speaking after the president's primetime address regarding election integrity. I appreciate all of you hanging out with us through some of the dips and turns of the technical issues as we managed to get this on the air for you, or get this on YouTube, I should say, for you. We appreciate this. We'll make sure this remains up so you can continue to watch it, and we'll continue to provide a lot of coverage of election security, elections, and a lot of coverage of the upcoming election in November. We're going to make sure to have all of the information we can provided to you, as always, on YouTube, also on our website, and of course on air. So remain with us throughout that process. Again, we appreciate you tuning in, and stay with us throughout the election season and beyond. Have a great night.
The recording has stopped.